Laurence Olivier.
Where is it?
With what?
What you've done.
Oh, just sit down there, you'll see. Now, what's that white sheet?
In 1944, after an absence of 6 years, Laurence Olivier returned to the stage. In the years away, he'd become an international film star, served in the Fleet Air Arm, and made his memorable debut as a film director with Henry V. With the war still on, he returned to act with and co-direct the Old Vic Company. His partner was Ralph Richardson.
But here he is in the first play we did at the new theatre, which was the Old Vic, was Arms in the Van, and there he is as Sergius. It's very like him.
Sergius was only the first in a succession of major comic and tragic parts. Olivier, it seems, was at his peak of inventiveness and determined, as usual, to stay as versatile as ever. The way in which he created each of these very different roles was to build on one or two key ideas. He delighted public and critics alike. One of his most memorable creations was the villainous crookback Richard III. The subsequent film version gives a fair idea of what the stage performance must have been like.
Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by this sun of York. And all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean, buried. Now are our brows bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, our dreadful marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war has smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute.
Usually, in finding a character, I'm afraid I do it from the outside in. I know modern thinking decrees that you should do it from the very inside out. They may be right, I don't know. It's not my way, and I don't do it that way. I'm not used to doing it that way. I'm used to doing it from the outside in. In other words, I paint for myself a portrait of the man in my mind's eye as if I was oil painting it. I say, that's this man.
In the case of Richard III, the portrait was based on a real person.
I had a very great dislike for an eminent director with whom I had worked in New York, whose name was Jed Harris. De mortuis, I'm sorry, and all that. But, and he is dead. But I always said it when he was alive. He was the horridest man I think I've ever worked for. Absolutely vile, sarcastic, cruel, absolutely merciless in his criticisms. I thought, I've got to make this fellow look absolutely hateful. Who do I know that I really hate? So Jed Harris came immediately swinging into my mind. It was very funny. I heard, it wasn't a follow-on of this, but I heard later, or perhaps it was about the same time, that the man, the Disney man who created The Big Bad Wolf, based it on Jed Harris.
Then, since this earth affords no joy to me, but to command, to check, to order such as are of better person than myself, I'll make my heaven to dream upon the crown. And whiles I live, to account this world but hell, until this misshaped trunk that bears this head be round impaled with a glorious crown.
That sort of thin voice is something I had never used before in any other part. And that particularly pedantic way of speaking with that very thin voice, rather schoolmasterish, a little sanctimonious, which of course was dead against the character, which made it a little more amusing, therefore more hypocritical, and somehow gave him, I felt, a strange authority.
I must marry Brother Edward's daughter, or else my kingdom stands on brittle glass. Murder her brothers and then marry her. Familiar way of gain. But I am in so far in blood that sin will pluck on sin. Dear falling pity dwells not in this eye.
And I sort of had to exercise it a lot before I started, to know if I could take the big stuff still on that voice without losing it.
Aye. What's o'clock?
I am thus bold to put your grace in mind of what you promised me.
Well, but what's o'clock?
Upon the stroke of 10.
Then let it strike!
Why? Let it strike.
Because that like a jack, thou keepst the stroke betwixt thy begging and my meditation.
What about the makeup for Richard III? You must have spent quite a while on it. Can you tell us about the makeup and the value of makeup to you generally?
I needed to look, as usual, I needed to look quite different from anything I had ever done before. I always required that if possible, on account of this craving for versatility. And I remember my first makeup, I don't think was very good. I had a very long sort of pointed nose, but I also had a very long nose that somehow I had to finish in there somewhere, so as to make a very, unfortunately, unattractively small upper lip. And that was it. I mean, you could almost do anything with a nose. Somebody was making me up for something, once for some film. It was cartoon. And they'd given me a false nose. Good, I said, fine. False cheekbones. Didn't know about that. False chin. False forehead. And I said, you have to come back to the truth of this, and that is that it's all false. But it simply is exactly me, but much bigger all over. Bigger here, bigger there, bigger here, bigger here. That's all. It's just me, but twice the size. I don't see the object of it. And that's what taught me, a bit late in life, I suppose, but it's better to do one thing, alter one feature, so that it's not associated with you at all. And that's why a nose is the easiest thing to apply putty to and make a different shape when you're a different person. It's the easiest.
It was a single detail that caught the audience's attention in his most famous double bill, played in one and the same night, of The Critic and Oedipus.
I uttered a certain cry or howl once, which unfortunately for me became rather famous in Oedipus, because it was so talked about that that moment in the play became over-important. that made life very difficult because it could not be done without. It was so part not only of the performance but the part and the play, and it was the moment when he realized with the full horror of what he was born to find himself out to be. Anyway, when that scream came about, it was very, very hard. And I remember I had to have many different images in order to promote it. And I remember my favorite image. I often go to animals for these images. And my favorite image for that scene was I was a fox caught in a trap by the feet. Because that, to me, has a dreadful connotation somehow. The utter helplessness and the agonizing pain and the knowledge that there was no way he could get away. And the torment of some wild beast caught in a trap. And that, I used to feed on that a great deal to get that scream, to try to get into it all the agony of every animal in the world who'd ever been caught in a trap, all in one, and tried to make them, bring them all into that scream. That sort of silly sounding childish trick is, sorry, it's very useful.
It is just a shadow, the tiny little part. And I did get rather cross with him, because he said, there's nothing very much to do. He said, I think Shallow keeps bees. This was during the rehearsal. I said, well, why not? Because it's in a country scene. He said, I think you get bees. Don't you think so, Ralph? I said, why not? So he had a bee hive there, you see, and I was playing that. And they would go, and one of the bees would come out, you see, and chase him. And he'd say, and I said, now, what do you think? You see, well, you know, I had to talk to him very seriously. I said, look, in this scene, I was playing full stop, we've got a lot of work to do. I've got to describe a good deal of plot. You know, very, very, very funny. But those bees, I said, if you're going ready to do that, I shall bumble off. Well, oh no, what did you say? With his general sweetness. Oh no, I'm sorry, Ralph, I'll behave. And he did.
The Old Vic seasons were complete sellouts, yet it was at this time that an opposing voice began to be heard. Olivier's brilliant technique was thought not enough. The distinguished critic James Agate, for example, asked whether a crucial emotional dimension was missing.
When I look at a watch, it is to see the time, not to admire the mechanism. I want an actor to tell me Lear's time of the day, and Olivier doesn't. He bids me watch the wheels go round.
Well, to me, acting is a technical problem. It's also an emotional problem. You've got to feel it. It's a great test for the imagination. If you're an artist, you've got to prove it. My only regret is that there have been times when I haven't managed to hide the technique. I know I haven't. And I'm accused of it, and I think there's justification in that accusation, to my sorrow.
It would seem, then, that Olivier's attitude to his use of technique lies near the heart of his identity as an actor. So we return to the subject, on which he is known to be reticent, on a later filming date. The performances you did on the same evening as Oedipus and Mr. Puff could scarcely be more different. And what a lot of people would be interested in is the different techniques you employed or had to employ for those two parts. What would you say about the contrasting techniques? How did you manage to switch through 180 degrees in the same evening? And what did each part require of you?
I don't see any miracle in that at all. In the first place, it's what I've been studying to do all my life, by the choice of parts. And in the second place, I saw an opportunity of showing this faculty off. Quite vulgar And I don't think the public has any business to worry about our technique at all. I don't think you shouldn't worry, but you're supposed to present something that's done. I mean, if you buy a diamond ring or something, or anything wonderful bit of, or things, you say, well, what was the technique behind that? You say, I just made it. Why don't you mind your own business? You're not a jeweler.
I'm not a jeweler, but I am an interviewer, and I don't take what you say
I know you
personally
are,
at all.
but the fact is, I think it's technique is a technician's business. And if he gives away his technique, well, anybody will walk around doing it.
You don't really believe that for a minute.
No, but what I do believe is that as I've been studying that very sort of technique all my life, it's no miracle any more than it is a miracle for a review artist to play about 8 or 10 different parts in one evening. The mere difference between Oedipus and the critic is so obvious, so palpably obvious, that it requires an entirely different store of effects that I don't see anything difficult to understand about it. I was there to show off, and rather vulgar it was.
Can you describe the difference between those two stores of effects for those two parts, for Oedipus and Mr.
Well,
Fogg?
no, they're there to be held. They're there to be seen. Any actor will tell you that he'll find great difficulty in describing his own technique. If he's directing somebody, if I'm directing somebody, and I see they're in difficulties, I can suggest a technique which will help them attain it. Sometimes it's perfectly simple, almost ludicrously simple. If you see a person anguished with a search for reality in their situation as an actor of this character at this moment in time in the play, they find great difficulty wrestling with that moment. And so often you can get the most fantastic results by saying, darling, try twice the pace. And reality can fall upon you like a cloak. Instead of all this roaring around, wrecking around, anguishing and like that, if you just do it, it's suddenly real. Well, that's a trick that you learn with experience.
You see, there's a couple of paradoxes which are fascinating in what you've said in the last 5 minutes. One is that everybody who talks about you with enormous admiration talks about your technique, given that they are fellow actors who know a lot about how to do the job and admire it. That's an important thing that they keep saying. They say other things as well, but they also say that. You yourself vehemently refuse to talk about it, which is not strange, but slightly bewildering that you don't want to talk about it at all in your own case. And yet when you talk about it with regard to other people as a director, you give a straightforward example of the way technique itself can change an appreciation.
Can be, in the simplest methods, but
Yeah.
that's a very simple one. But
well, is it because...
ask a singer
is it
about
because
his technique. I can tell you what the singer will say. He'll say, of course, I'm perfectly in tune. I do happen to be gifted with the most glorious voice. And I have learned through years and years and years of solid practice and work how to place it. Now, this performance you're talking of took place in 1945. That's 20 years. 20 years of polishing. 20 years of working over, developing, through a various range of parts which help you to develop. As I said, you know, it surprises me that you're surprised when I tell you that in 1926 I played Uncle Vanya one meet and Tony Lumpkin the next. Now that's already developing my technique for me. The versatility that I always wish to dazzle people with is gradually being produced all the time.
But was that aim...
It's quite deliberate.
The aim towards versatility was quite deliberate, was it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I always had that childish idea that they wouldn't recognize me one week from the previous week. And that was the childish ambition I had. And it lasted. I didn't think by the time I played Edith was in the critic. They weren't going to recognize me in the first place. My name would be on the program, and they'd know the name by now. And there it was. And therefore, all you had to do then was find... You couldn't play those two parts as if you were the same actor. I don't think. I don't think you could. It follows naturally. It was quite cynical almost. Which is what made it vulgar, I think. The obvious attempt to succeed and to bring off a very startling piece of versatility. It startled the viewer. It didn't startle me because I knew exactly how possible it was, and I knew that it was anybody doing that would also make a success. Who chose those particular range of roles? They're bound to.
It seems to me then what you're saying about this business of technique that you don't, that in a way you don't want to talk about, you don't think should be talked about, is rather as if you're saying that technique is to you like common law, that's something that's built on precedents year after year after year, like the English system of law, where you go on particular cases, and out of that eventually comes the technique you want. It isn't a particular set of samples you can go to at any time. It's more to do with experience than to do with actual pattern of learned habits.
Mark, I may be shy of talking about it for a very practical reason, that what I'm accused of, generally, in critical worlds, is that I'm more technical actor, and they find fault with me for not being a more feeling actor. And they say, well, he's all technique, never feels anything. That doesn't happen to be true at all. I feel every bit as much as I think anybody could feel. The fact is that I'm not going to allow myself to run away with my feelings. And it may be true that I'm over-guarded on that score. I don't know. I see myself only on the screen, of course, or on telly. But I'm sorry, I don't think it's boasting if I say it does seem real to me. I haven't studied technique per se. I've not studied technique for that reason. I've studied technique as a means of achieving some emotion, of achieving some effect. Yes, effect. Yes, yes. I'm blushing that I say effect, because that's what actors made up of. That's what they regard as important acting is made up of massive effects, which have to be contrived, which have to be searched for, which have to be presented in a well-disguised fashion. Sometimes you fail in somewhere along that line. Often, I suppose.
And I think he does revel in his own talent, which is a nice thing to see, because it's done without a lack of humor or a lack of... it's not the over-seriousness which can become a bit boring with an actor. It's a great ability which he recognizes and which he enjoys like a painter enjoys his paints. Or
Tomorrow may it please you to be crowned.
Even when you please, for you will have it so.
Tomorrow, then we will attend your grace, and so most joyfully we take our leave.
Come, let us to our holy work again. Farewell, my cousin. Farewell, gentle friend.
He always had great confidence. What is wonderful about Larry is his immense conviction with what he's doing. He takes a thing and drives it right home. And if you disagree with his conception, you are very often carried away by the execution. I am.
Olivier's period with the Old Vic was one of sustained effort and achievement, and to a large extent it was his displays of technique that had made him, many thought, the king of the English theatre. On the stage of the Old Vic, I asked him finally about the end of the process, when the curtain comes down. What about afterwards? Is there a sense of achievement, exhilaration, exhaustion? What?
The last, mostly. But if you're wise, you take the part off with your makeup. You forget about it. Otherwise, people who can't do that suffer very much. Very much. And I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's even good for the work to go on thinking about it afterwards. I mean, rehearsing is a different problem. I'm not talking about periods of rehearsal. Of course, you think about nothing else day and night in those circumstances. But in playing a part, if you've given it everything you've got, you ought to sit down and have a nice drink. That's what I say.
Very few photographs of Larry. I don't keep an awful lot of photographs, but I've a couple here that I was able to turn up, and I'm very fond of. At the end of the Old Vic season, we were asked to go dressing up as soldiers in Ensa. We went to Hamburg and to Paris and into places that were the occupied by our troops, and nothing very much to keep them amused. And so they sent us without Shakespeare. We wondered very much if they'd be amused, but I think they really liked it very much. They were. So here we are. This is me, and this is Laurence. It's got a very typical look. A very good-humoured, very restful. A smile. Bored to death.
After the war, Olivier and Vivien Leigh moved to a 14th century abbey in the heart of the English countryside, Notley Abbey. Among their weekend guests was Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
I never quite made out whether it was selected by Vivien or by Larry, but I always imagined Larry did, because I suspect that he envisioned himself riding in and out of it in full armor with a lance and a horse, galloping off to the Crusades or to the lists to fight for his fair lady with her veil on the end of his lance or whatever. I accused him of it once, and he pooh-poohed me, but I still suspect that it was again, the romance of the place, almost the theatrical romance. It was so beautiful, it's like a set.
I used to stay at Notley Abbey, which in the country with him, weekends and things. And I saw a great deal of Vivien Leigh, of whom I was extremely fond. He only kind of pervaded the scene, and he was always busy in his own room planning and making models and thinking things over. He would never discuss his future plans, probably knowing that I was such a gossip that I would begin to, or possibly would put a spoke into the wheel, I don't know which. Anyhow, I never got to know what he was up to. And I was always rather fascinated. I thought he played a different part every day. One day he was the landowner, one day he was the squire, one day he was the gardener, you know, or one day he was the great host. And he does enjoy playing a number of roles, both on and off the stage, I think.
Olivier was still co-director of the Old Vic Company, but his next role was to be realized on the screen. Hamlet.
This is the tragedy of a man who could not make up his mind.
In contrast to the lavish colour of Henry V and Richard III, Hamlet was shot in black and white. The critics were impressed.
Mr. Laurence Olivier has begun work at Denham on Hamlet. It will be photographed in black and white. The reason for this is that Mr. Olivier sees this play as an engraving rather than a painting.
I'm awfully sorry I lied about it. The fact is, I was in the middle of a bitter row with Technicolor. I wouldn't do it in colour. It's so childish. So schoolboy sulks, I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I was always interested, in fact, people said I was far too interested in moving camera in Hamlet. I was accused of being over self-conscious about film directing. I wanted to exercise myself with the camera. Yes, I did. And maybe I overdid it, certainly. But, and I'm frightfully sorry. But it was all right because it pays off sometimes. When you go straight from the end of the very first soliloquy, like that, and the camera simply leaves and goes all the way across an interesting courtyard, goes up, shows a very interesting bedroom. But you know, that wasn't shown you for nothing. And that works nicely.
The duel sequence is quite spectacular. It's a long duel sequence that you have with Terence Morgan as Laertes. Why did you want to make it such a spectacle? And it looked very real, that fight.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it looked real because it was dangerous. And what you have to do to make a fight look real, it's absolutely hopeless if you fight with a chap who's afraid of hurting you. If it's bang, 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 and you know it's all rehearsed for the Letchworth amateurs or something, it's no good. Has to be very real, and you have to practice it very much. And you have to be gifted towards it. You must like it. If you are afraid of hurting your opponent, you don't like it. You don't like the game. But you must really go for them, and they must really go for you. That's why that looked good. And that's why it was long, because it was good. And the audience enjoyed it, as they did in the Elizabethan days.
It was another grand slam. Olivier had conceived, starred in, and most important to him, directed the picture.
It is my favorite occupation in life.
More than acting?
Directing a film. And the thing of the triple job is very fascinating. And the responsibility of that is a big challenge. We're once grown up to like challenges.
Hamlet brought Olivier an Oscar. In the same year, 1947, he received a knighthood. He and Vivien Leigh were now more than ever national celebrities. In drab, post-war Britain, they represented romance and became the popular idols of the day. Britain's theatre royals.
Arriving at Fremantle, Sir Laurence Olivier and his wife Vivien Leigh were assured of a very warm welcome. There in Australia with the Old Vic Company on a tour of the Commonwealth. Australian theatregoers certainly have something to look forward to.
On the Australian tour, Olivier was as much an ambassador as actor.
On Anzac Day in Canberra, Hamlet, Sir Laurence Olivier, was present with his wife Vivian Leigh at the returned soldiers' reunion.
When a man is British, he is constantly finding himself proud of being so. More than once it has been put to me in question form since I have been in your country that it might be assumed in some quarters that Britain might very well consider herself to be finished. My friends, I say to you that if one of your most loving relations, my countrymen, thought for a moment that any of your great kindness was provoked by that feeling of pity which is so akin to contempt, I say to you that there is not a Briton alive who would not rather that you not only never sent them another parcel, but that you never spared them another thought, wish, or a sigh. Britain is not finished, my friend.
But Olivier's tenure as director of the Old Vic was. In Australia, he received a letter from the chairman of the Old Vic. He and Richardson were fired.
It was between two performances on the same day of Richard III. And I received this letter from Lord Esher, who was the chairman, saying, well, we've all had a splendid success and we've been at it 5 years and how wonderful it is, but we think it's time we all said goodbye and you two went about your ways and we engaged other people for this part. It's getting to be altogether too personalized, we think, and we think there's no very good national flavor about that. Something like that. I'm only making half of that out, but it's a sort of very excuseful way of justifying the absolutely unjustified firing of two very important people to them, and the people who'd made it. I've often thought the board was jealous. I could never understand it. You know, after all we'd done for the place. 5 years and made it a great success. 5 years? Out.
Thrown back on his own resources, Olivier became an actor-manager in his own right at the St. James Theatre. He also concentrated on furthering Vivian Leigh's stage career. In 1949, he directed her in a stage version of A Streetcar Named Desire.
Although she was very fine in it, Vivian, I felt, as I suppose many other people did, that it was a bit of a strain for a woman with her nervous disease to have to go through a part like that 8 times a week. It must have been very bad for her. I mean, she's too near to the Tennessee Williams characters for it to be very good for her to act them on the stage, I would think. But then who shall say?
Vivian Leigh was physically and mentally ill. Tuberculosis constantly undermined her physical strength, while her mental condition grew increasingly uncertain. In later years, she would develop a pattern of uncontrolled, violent behavior, often in public. Olivier shielded her as far as possible. Work seemed to have a stabilizing influence on her, and Olivier encouraged it. Critics remained skeptical about her talent, but she was serious about her acting and never afraid of a big role.
I think if Caesar were gone, I could govern the Egyptians.
Cleopatra, this may be the vanity of youth.
No, it is not that I am so clever, but that the others are so stupid.
Truly, that is the great secret.
Now, tell me what you came to say.
Nothing.
Nothing?
At least to beg for my liberty, that is all.
For that you would have knelt to Caesar. No, Pothinus. You came with some plan that depended on Cleopatra being a little nursery kitten. Now that Cleopatra is a queen, your plan is upset.
Is Cleopatra then indeed a queen, and no longer Caesar's prisoner and slave?
Pothinus, we are all Caesar's slaves. All we in this land of Egypt, whether we will or no. And she who is wise enough to know this will reign when Caesar departs.
You harp on Caesar's departure.
What if I do?
Does he not love you?
Love me? For silence. Caesar loves no one. He makes friends with everyone as he does with dogs and children. His kindness to me is a wonder. Neither mother, father, nor nurse have ever taken so much care of me, or thrown open their thoughts to me so freely.
In 1951, she recreated Shaw's kittenish queen for the stage in Caesar and Cleopatra. On alternate nights, she starred in Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. In both, Olivier played her lover.
She was limited in voice, but there again she took infinite trouble. And when she did Cleopatra, she had voice lessons for weeks to get her voice to a lower range register. And she was intensely disciplined and professional and mad to be a good actress. And she was, apart from that, she was a wonderful friend and a beautiful decorative creature. But I suppose she hadn't got the... In some ways, I think her Cleopatra was so good because she had many of the qualities that Cleopatra needs, which if you read the play, you see very clearly. And therefore, a lot of that was very congenial to her.
Did it change the way your career went, being married to someone who was had a very strong, big professional reputation herself as an actress?
It's a funny thing, I never thought about that. I don't think so. I don't really think so. You see, I don't think so. I don't think it did. Not really. Must have influenced it a little bit, of course.
I mean, did it make you look for particular parts that they, or plays that
No, we resolved not to have a partnership much, except on rare occasions.
Mm.
Because that was pure sense, that was common financial sense. Because very soon after our union started, I had become a sort of number one, I don't know what you call it, film star, film actor with Wuthering Heights and that. Wuthering Heights, Rebecca, Pride and Prejudice. And then ultimately with her Lady Hamilton. She came out, and then of course the Gone with the Wind thing started.
Yeah.
And from then on it was very difficult to get together. Our careers seemed determined to be separate.
Well, I think there was always the question of whether one was harming the other by keeping them back. I mean, that she was more successful in films, and therefore she shouldn't play all the leading parts on the stage, or that he was more successful on the stage and shouldn't put her into leading parts when she ought to be filming. So there was always a certain rivalry, there must have been. But above all, there was her health, which was extremely delicate, which I didn't even know until after she'd died, what a time he had had. But he did once ask me to come and see him in New York just before he married Joan Plowright, and told me something of what he had been through in his years with Vivian. And he said, she's given me some of the happiest moments of my life, but also some of the most terrible ones. And I felt so, and I said to him, I'm so grateful that you've never asked my opinion or consulted me in any way about your troubles, nor has she. But I said, all I can say is that I know how wonderfully helpful she was to you when you were at St. James's, and how wonderfully helpful you were to her when she was not well and they were on this great tour of Europe, the Titus. And two people who can supply that for each other must have had some wonderful bond in common. And that's really all I can say about it.
I always knew that she had the makers. Of course, she was much too beautiful to be regarded so by any critics. Completely blinded by beauty like that. They couldn't believe that that could nurse any talent. And I must say, it was some years before it began to come out and emerge and stand as a light on its own. And, I mean, I suppose the thing that made her was Gone with the Wind, really, which launched her in the most tremendous way. And thereafter, they still, the public and particularly the critical faculty, still held her in strong suspicion because of her beauty. But it took her a long time to win that battle. Of course she did. And she was very remarkable. The last few years of her life, she was very remarkable. But as I say, by that time, our partnership had almost finished. In fact, quite. and other things, although life took us apart.
It was a partnership that people felt mighty attracted by. And it involved all sorts of glorious luxuries like Notley Abbey. There were great satisfactions about it. And then various most unfortunate experiences of illness came upon us. Not mine, but things began to become, unfortunately, very, very difficult, but I don't want to talk about that. But on the whole, it was a life. It was a rich experience. But if you're asking me, do I look upon it with an especial roseate hue? No. I like my life better now than I have ever liked.
The Oliviers divorced in 1961. She was to die 6 years later. In 1957, a new Laurence Olivier emerged. Now he played a seedy, third-rate song and dance man, the entertainer.
Such a glorious part. What a change. I was getting so stewed up with my image of doing a sort of classical role in the theatre, or very costumey role if it wasn't classical. I simply found myself completely bored with myself as an actor, knowing that the public must know what to expect and getting just that every time they came to see me. And it was absolutely deplorably depressing, and really did me made me awfully sulky about life and discontented, utterly discontented with myself and my work, which I'd never looked forward to feeling.
Well, you were a lovely lot tonight, really lovely lot tonight. I've played in front of them all, you know. Yes, I've played in front of them all. The Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Prince of Wales, and what's the name of that other pub?
Sir Laurence Olivier, darling of the establishment, had thrown in his lot with the original angry young man.
What did you think that you were going to encounter with John Osborne?
Oh, I had a rough idea. I'd met him. I'd been round to see him after a performance of his in Cards of Identity.
You offered me a part in Macbeth. You remember the Scottish play? I mean, sorry. The Scottish play.
No, Macbeth, we can, you know, we're not superstitious. We're too old to be superstitious. Anyway, then, what part did I offer?
The Doctor. That's right. You said you like hiding behind makeup, I remember, and you have quite right. Yeah, right.
Oh dear, that's terribly funny.
Didn't get the part.
Hide your face, man, the girls have got me. I shan't be home for an hour or two. I've got all sorts of nice things to do. They've got me worked up in such a state, so hide your face, man, because I can't hardly wait. So hide your face, man, the girls have got me.
And people used to commend my singing, and they used to say, I think it's so wonderful how badly you sing. And I used to say, I'm sorry to disillusion you, but I sing as well as I know how in this part, and I dance as well as I know how. Nothing is taken off it. I just do it as well as I can, and it works out all right for Archie Rice. Yeah. It shows the sort of actor I really am.
Oh, if you learn it properly, you get yourself a technique. You can smile, don't you? Smile and look the friendliest, jolliest thing in the world. But you'll be just as dead and used up, just like everybody else.
In the cast of The Entertainer was a young actress, Joan Plowright.
This face can split open with warmth and humanity. It can sing, tell the worst, unfunniest stories in the world to a great mob of dead, drab irks. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because, look,
look at my eyes. I'm dead behind these eyes. I'm dead. Just like the whole damn shoddy lot out there.
They would later marry.
We would be both socially and politically opposed to Larry at that time. I mean, it was a time where, in our group, it'd be anybody who was sort of frightfully well-groomed or too glamorous for their own good, we couldn't really act. I mean, you had to be in jeans and sweaters to have talent. When he finally came in, of course, and started acting, I mean, there he was. He was just an actor. He was a man in shirt sleeves and with sweat on his brow and acting everybody off the stage. So that sort of resentment can't stay when you're confronted with that sort of talent.
You've been a good audience. Very good. A very good audience. Let me know where you're working tomorrow night. I'll come and see you.
Larry, unlike all those other actors, came in early because, well, the instinct that he has, which makes him different. And it wasn't expediency. It was a very natural, it was an instinct with him. And he stuck his neck out, and all those, God bless them, all those other famous actors didn't do it for years later. John Gielgud hardly ever did it. Ralph Richardson did it when, a long time later, with plays like David's Stories and so on. But Larry was the first one who really did. He was, he stood up and he was counted. And I think it's rather remarkable. I mean, especially in the, nobody really remembers now, but the iron atmosphere of that time, and the pressure that must have been put on him not to do it. One saw it in rehearsal the whole time. People said, you're making a terrible mistake. I mean, this remove, it seems like not much of a gesture, but at that time, it was.
There's something about an actor.
In 1961, Olivier was in Chichester as the first director of the new Festival Theatre. He was living in nearby Brighton with Joan Plowright and the first of their 3 children.
First it's Flo, then Kate, then Jane, then he's off on tour again. Naughty boy, naughty boy.
But larger responsibilities were in the offing. While at Chichester, Olivier was approached to be the first director of the National Theatre.
And very unfortunately for me and for this enterprise, it leaked. The news that I was going to be the director of the National leaked 2 days before we opened. That put all that lovely sympathy that you extend to the country cousins way, way beyond the clouds. All that sympathy vanished. They say, oh, we must, oh, it's such a brave little effort. Oh, look at them, aren't they doing well? All of that went overnight. So, oh, it's the director of the National. Now we shall see what. And so, of course, the whole season was taken up. Do we expect this sort of mistake to be made by our future director of the National Theatre of Great Britain?
He wasn't sure that he wanted to do it, but he couldn't see anybody else who could. And in a way, the responsibility built from that. Behind that was an enormous desire to, obviously, to found or help found a national theatre. And with that huge desire came the determination to make himself the man who had to run it.
I was about the best person for the job. I had had so many failures as a management, which to the governors they had the sense to see that meant I had learnt so much. I
have been an actor, I've been an actor manager, I've been a director time and time again, and I had been a manager above all. And therefore, very few actors had had quite the same breadth of experience in every department to do with the theatre as I had.
That's my own personal life. There's absolutely nothing.
Olivier's Chichester production of Uncle Vanya was always intended for the National Theatre.
You know, when you walk through a forest on a dark night and a light gleams in the distance, you don't notice the darkness, nor your weariness, nor the sharp twigs that lash you in the face. Now, I work, as you know, harder than anyone in this district. Now, fate is continually lashing at me. At times, I'm unbearably miserable. And I have no light in the distance.
I cast the second season in order to start the National Theatre Company with something. People who had already played together, and that's very important. Playing together, the knowledge of each other's habits, looks, and you marshal all those forces if you're a director of a company, and it's your job to see that it all comes off for everybody, if it can.
And so while you're building the company up at Chichester, the theatre is going up at the same time on the South Bank. Did you have a big...
It's hardly going up. No. My contract with the National Theatre was that I should be the director of the National Theatre for 5 years, or until the theatre was built, whichever should be the longer. I love the idea of the National Theatre going up in 5 years.
I declare this stone well and truly laid.
The tortuous progress of the building of the National Theatre formed a constant backdrop to Olivier's time there. Though the stone was laid first in 1951, it didn't find its home until 1969, when building began on the south bank of the Thames. That building was never completed while Olivier was director. In the meantime, the centre of operations was the Old Vic. There, Olivier gave what were probably to be his last great stage performances.
Now look here, gentlemen, he that bids me fairest shall have this.
My dear, I'll prefer you. I'll make you a corporal this minute. A corporal? I'll make you my companion. You shall eat with me. You shall drink with me. You shall lie with me, you young rogue. You shall receive your pay and do no duty.
Then you must make me a field officer.
Oh, I'll do more than all this. I'll make you a corporal and give you brevet for sergeant. Can you read and write, sir?
Yes.
Then your business is done. I'll make you chaplain to the regiment.
Nay, take my life and all. Pardon not that. You take my house if you do take the prop that doth sustain my house. You take my life if you do take the means whereby I live. I'd work like hell. I left a good job as a machinist to take super's parts because I love the theatre. I was wild with ambition. I read every play ever written. I studied Shakespeare and studied the Bible. I educated myself. I got rid of an Irish brogue. He got caught with a knife. I loved Shakespeare. I'd have acted in any of his plays for nothing, for the joy of being alive in his great poetry. And I acted when an impact on inspired by him. I could have been a great Shakespearean actor if I'd kept on. I know that now. In 1874, when Edwin Booth came to the theatre in Chicago, where I was a leading man, I played Cassius to his Brutus one night, Brutus to his Cassius the next, Othello to his Iago, and so on. The first night I played Othello, he said to our manager, "That young man is playing Othello better than I ever did. Now, forever farewell the tranquil mind, farewell content, farewell the plumed troops and the big wars that make ambition virtue. Oh, farewell. Farewell the neighing steed and the shrill trump, the spirit-stirring drum, the ear-piercing fife, the royal banner, and all quality, pride, pomp, and circumstance of glorious war. And oh, you mortal engines whose rude throats the immortal Jove's dread clamours counterfeit, farewell!
This was the original, would be the original. Then, as I say, Michel Saint-Denis in his reign brought it to about there.
Yeah.
And then I went absolutely mad and brought it right out to here, getting rid of seats.
What made you
stopping us
why did
getting
you push it right out?
Because I believed in the thing of unification, and having an orchestra pit between you and that destroyed that utterly. But what I did this time was wreck the theatre. I'm sorry to have to admit it. It was perfectly true. Look how close it is to the circle. We've lost now. What happens now is you stand here, you're playing a scene with me. We go straight against that wall there, and the sound has to go like that, and then get out over there. Now, here, you've got this beautiful cigar shape, absolutely superb Victorian theatre. You cannot miss everything there.
So you ruined it?
I wrecked it. Absolutely ruined it. I'm terribly sorry, everybody.
As director of the National Theatre, Olivier had even more pressing problems than the shape of the stage. From the start, the company was chronically underfunded, and critics were always ready to snipe at how what money there was allocated. Olivier wouldn't cut corners in mounting his productions, and the early seasons were successful. In 1965, the company toured overseas.
But where are they going with all their excitement and finery and their acclaimed production of Othello? Those cameramen recognized the airline steward as Sir Laurence Olivier, their star of stars.
By then, Olivier's personal style of management had led to some criticism inside and outside the company. And soon there was to be criticism of the choice of plays which the company put on. In deciding the repertory, Olivier usually relied on the advice of his literary manager, the strongly anti-establishment Kenneth Tynan. This was to bring him into public conflict with a board of governors who insisted on a right of veto. On top of all this, or perhaps because of it, Olivier, for the first time in his life, developed stage fright.
And I was perfectly all right for the first 10 minutes. And I say perfectly all right, it was passable. I didn't feel I had to stop right away or pretend to fall down in a faint or anything. I just felt pretty ill, but I felt, so far, I think it's all right. And then I began to think that it wouldn't last much longer, I thought, probably, so I better watch it. And I thought, well, I'm sure I know the next 3 lines, and did those. I think I'd better step forward to the audience now and apologize, sir, I've been taken ill. I said, no, 2 more, I think I know the next 2. And I thought, I think I can do 1 more. I did 1 more. And I started to walk down to the audience and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm dreadfully sorry, I've been taken ill. And I realized that Noel Coward was in front, that Pinky Beaumont was in front, that all sorts of mighty important people were in front, my own associate directors were in front, and I was going to disgrace the entire establishment in front of itself. And something made me say, that's not good enough, come back, and then proceeded these dreadful earmarks of stage fright, literal stage fright. The audience went round and round and round, and my throat dried up. And I turned round and I sort of walked up and down stage and thought, if I give way to this, I shall never appear again. Ever. So I'll just go on by the skin of my teeth, going on and on and on, and the whole performance was conducted in those circumstances, that of just hanging on somehow throughout the whole performance. Of course, the end of which I was fit to be buried, I was so tired. And that didn't happen again, but it was apt to from then on. And without warning, this perfectly ordinary first actor's appearance, 17-year-old actor's stage fright would seize hold of me, and I never knew when it was going to happen. And I was tormented by this situation for 6 years. I had promised I would play Shylock. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how. And somehow, I said to the cast something that was against all of our consciences. I said, I know this is the most awful thing you ever expected to hear from me, but I don't want any of you to look me in the eye tonight. And that's something, I mean, was our absolute part of our training was never, you know, never look like that at people unless you're playing a character that doesn't look at people in the eye. Otherwise, the actors hold each other together with looks between the four eyes to hold each other together. And I had to say, if you look me in the eye and I catch you doing it, I'm going to go. I know it. I know it's all wrong and wicked and sinful and everything against me I've ever thought about acting, and I'm awfully sorry. Please forgive me, but just tonight, don't look me in the eye. Gradually, I shall be able to take it. And nobody did. Everybody managed to look thoughtfully to one side or the other of my face, and I never had this nerve-wracking thing as I thought it would be of meeting eye to eye. And I just got through. It was a just. But having got through a first night, it started to get better. Occasionally it came upon me again. I had to come to grips with it on the stage again, and it was 6 years before it's over came upon me. It's a dreadful thing to happen to a chap of 60.
By 1973, the building was nearing completion, but the intervening years had taken their toll.
It is an understatement when I say to you that I am very happy to be here today.
During his period as director, Olivier had been undergoing radiochemical treatment for cancer, but even so, he'd never let up on his punishing work schedule. The cancer had retreated, but pleurisy and a thrombosis had followed. It seemed a successor was needed. The board didn't take Olivier's suggestions seriously. Without first consulting Olivier, they approached the then director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, Peter Hall.
Tell me what you're joking about. No, I mean, it's like a sort of Polonaise drawing, isn't it?
Peter Hall came in not as director designate, but as co-director, as Olivier's equal. That same year, Olivier left.
You ought to get somebody to make some...
Peter Hall was to have the glory of taking the National Theatre to its new home. For 10 years, Olivier had poured all his energy into the creation of the National. It must have seemed a cruel end to a dream.
Board, chairman, friends, Sir Laurence. Tonight is the beginning, everybody, of Sir Lawrence's sabbatical, which we hope will be thoroughly academic, in that we shall see much of him here as an associate director, and that we shall only let him off on a very short string before he returns to help us to open that over there. In the meantime, I have been asked on behalf of all of us to present him with a little memento of the future. There is also, which may interest you, Larry, an envelope with a substantial sum, which could be donated to charity. But we beg you to remember that charity begins at home. The Olivier Theatre.
One close-up,
This is ravishingly beautiful. I don't know if you see the significance. It has the old Vic in the background, you see. And this, it's beautifully thought out and designed. Absolutely marvelous. The fact that it is named after me is a ridiculously high honor. It is merely the type of sort of chairman or something.
Could you take that glass for me? I don't really want to go out.
I was sort of always dreaming of marching my little troop up the road and into their new home, but that wasn't for me. I was sad not to have felt a glow of self-satisfaction. I couldn't feel that. I'm afraid it sounds awfully weakling, but I'm afraid I was so tired out. I was glad to let it go. I was just glad to let it go. I wasn't satisfied or happy with my work there. And I don't think there'll be anything that turns up on the horizon that will ever make me feel satisfied and happy. It wasn't a flop, I don't think. But to myself, I failed. I don't think to most people. Hope not.
Is it too corny to ask, being on the stage of the Old Vic now, do you feel you'd like to be on the stage again doing another play?
Well, if I had a bit more confidence about being able to do it, if I thought I could develop the voice again, and if I thought I could develop what it takes here, there's a particular pocket hereabouts of energy which a stage actor has to have, which a film actor or a television actor is better without. But I was very depleted of ambition to do anything but just find something that could earn me some money and, you know, that I could manage. I didn't want to do something I couldn't manage, and I felt that the stage was something I couldn't manage.
Olivier was ill again, even more seriously than before.
It was an illness that was very difficult to diagnose at the beginning, but I was eventually discovered to be to do with a complete uproar in the cells of the body, which was a kind of nervous breakdown, I suppose. It was at one time very, very serious indeed. And it was as though he had given up, as though he'd done all he had to do in life, and there wasn't, or there didn't appear to be, very much reason to fight.
I always had relapses of one kind or another. I had, as I said, this one terrible time of 16 weeks in hospital. It's a long time. And it's enough to make one yield up the ghost a bit about all one's most secret ambitions.
And then some kind of work came into his life again. And through that there was a sort of immediate response. One never knows anything, you know, enough about mind over matter, or what mind does in an illness, or what somebody's spirit or will does in an illness. All I can say is the spirit did come back. The will to live and to fight came back, and the recovery after that was quite remarkable.
A night for the shade, or two was the bow-legged conductor of a tuppenny bus. The boy here?
Yes, dear, he's here.
Don't let anyone ever deceive you into believing that the world was created in 6 days.
Would you like your coffee now, dear?
The evolution of the horse was the most tortuous process. This coffee's frozen like a sort of Arctic mud.
Shall I make you some fresh, dear?
Rather like it. 6 days' labor wouldn't even evolve one primitive earthworm. Got some more of that. So, now there is 6 days nonsense, What are you trying to do now? Scold me to death?
And now he's about to take on King Lear.
I know. I know. Yes, it's been extraordinary. It's, I mean, if anybody could be described as that sort of the rubber ball, you know, I mean, the harder you bounce it down, the higher it bounces up again. That's him.
I was wondering if tomorrow on the stage at Chichester we could, I could ask you just to look through, read through almost, to one of Lear's speeches.
Oh, I wouldn't like to do that.
Why not?
I wouldn't know how.
As if it were a read-through.
Oh, I wouldn't like to do that.
Well, you see, we haven't got any rehearsal material at all.
No, I know you haven't.
I know, you've been very careful about that.
Very careful. I never rehearse. I never let a soul into a rehearsal.
This is not a rehearsal, you see. I thought we'd been terribly clever. We'd have a read-through. Just you read...
No, I don't think so.
Couldn't we just...
No, you have to pay to see that.
I've had a lot of fun out of the law.
Have you ever been to the south of France?
Once or twice. It's all right, except for the dreadful greasy food they can't stop boasting about.
Bill and Daphne say the worst of the war is they can't get to the south of France.
Who are they?
The ladies from the bookshop. Daphne is Miss Cox.
And Bill?
Bill's Miss Baker.
Damn run.
Because in those days, when we were younger, he was much younger than I was. But now he's older. These days, I think he's a bit older than I. His experience of life has been greater, I think, than mine. He's produced more films than I have, played bigger parts than I have. So I think perhaps he's got now a little bit older than I am. I mean, it wasn't so very long ago, he said to me, a few years ago, he said, "Ralphie, how old are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 71. He said, "Are you? Are you, dear?" "Well, Ralphie, you are a silly old bugger, aren't you?"
The great thing is the example he has set.
I should have thought, in case I ever give this sort of an interview, I must have the ground leveled, evened out. It's very bad to have stumbling as you walk over your own territory.
Oops. Have you always been interested in gardens?
Yes.
And the young people, the young whom he thinks ignore him and dismiss him as a sort of past hero of the stage, they still write to say your example of work, of integrity, of dedication has inspired us. You are the reason we are in the theatre or on the stage. And that is one of his greatest achievements.
But there you are, 75. It's, I'm terribly grateful. I've got marvelous family, wonderful wife, marvelous children, adorable, wonderful, they're sweet to me. And I'm very spoilt and very petted. I'm damn lucky. You caught me at a good moment. Yeah, it's a funny sort of old day, isn't it?